The Mercedes-Benz S-Class. The name alone conjures up thoughts of elegance, sophistication, luxury, a hint of Grey Poupon. But, of course, the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is also one of the longest running makes in the car industry. And today we're comparing the brand new one against one of the legends. Although, this car was never officially called the S-Class, right, Case?
Technically, this 1973 280 SEL 4.5 is right before the first of the S-Classes. But what this name means is S for sedan, E for injection, and L for long wheelbase. So this is actually the longer wheelbase version of Mercedes' basically flagship sedan. So
Mercedes throughout the generation are tracked by their model code, basically an internal alphanumeric thing. So that 73 is a W108, this 2024 is a W223. That's a little bit of fun thing you can pull out at Cars and Coffee to impress people. But this is, of course, the S-Class, in this case, the S580. Now, the base S-Class is a 3-liter inline 6, and you'd expect it to be called the S300, except it's not. It's called the S500. And then there's the S500E, and then the S580, which is what this is, which has a 4-liter engine, and then there's the S63E Performance. So look, the letter and the number don't really mean a whole lot, and to be honest, they don't really mean a whole lot on the old one either. It's always been a little wishy-washy.
One of the most obvious differences between these two vehicles that has changed over the years are their dimensions. This new S-Class is 1,000 pounds heavier than my car. It's 6 inches wider, a foot longer, 14 inches longer in wheelbase, and that's especially impressive considering that my car is the extended wheelbase model. Even so, this S-Class is massive next to it.
And you especially see that difference in wheel size. This 1973 has a 14-inch steel wheel with a hubcap, and this 2024 is riding on a 20-inch wheel. But if that's not big enough, larger options are definitely available.
At a glance, you might not notice, but there are actually a couple design similarities between these two cars at the front end. If you look, both of these grills have a very similar design with a vertical and a couple horizontal chrome pieces. And then both of these cars have the stars sticking up out of the hood and a crest below.
Now, I'd love to kind of wax poetically about the history and the design evolution between these two cars, but really there is very little that's carried over, except for the fact that the new S-Class still uses quite a bit of chrome, which is getting a little unusual in 2024. But I mean, everything from the trunk design to the window greenhouse is so different when you compare the 73 to the 2024.
Inside of the 108, you have obviously a much simpler interior, but still very comfortable and very elegant. The design of this dash is, to this day, one of the most beautiful, in my opinion, dashboards you can find on any car. Mine in particular is still a work in progress, so things like the radio aren't quite fully installed, but these interiors are stunning. And these gauges are absolutely iconic. Being the extended wheelbase version of the car, we have a whole lot of room back here. I've got a bunch of knee room, I've got a bunch of headroom, and these are very plush, comfortable seats. I have my own ashtray, which is very luxurious. Of course, there's a lighter up front, no lighter back here. And I do have an armrest, but really not a lot of amenities. There's no door pockets. Back here, there are nets, very saggy nets on the backs of the seats. No cup holders. I've got a map light, my ashtray, and that's about it. So Tommy, you've got your lap belt on. If you want, you can use the optional
Non-retractable
shoulder belt. Yeah, non-retractable, manually adjustable. Do you feel safe?
Safer, although I feel like any kind of collision, and you're gonna have quite a few splinters.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of wood in this car.
And no airbags.
No, but keep in mind, this was a really safe car for the early 70s. Mercedes was an early pioneer of like crumple zones, of safety cells. So it's not safe by modern standards, but it's pretty good in 73.
So for the time, this was a very advanced car. This has 4-wheel independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes. It has central locking. Wow. It's fuel injected. It's pretty good for 73. Let's see how it accelerates.
It progresses. Yeah.
So the funny thing about this car is that it accelerates about the same from 20 to 30 miles per hour as it does from 60 to 70 miles per hour.
And what's the horsepower?
Oh, it's under 200. It's not much.
Yeah, and it's a 4.5 liter fuel-injected V8, naturally aspirated. Look, I think the thing about this car, right, is the engine is smooth, and it makes a cool burble with your aftermarket exhaust, but that's not really the highlight of the driving experience.
No, not at all. This is from an era when luxury cars truly were about comfort and nothing else. There wasn't really the intention of being high performance. Of course, there was a 300 SEL 6.3 that was the world's fastest sedan when it came out. This is not that. And because we've got so much sidewall on these tires, and because of the way the suspension is set up on this car, it's really plush.
And it is so well made. I mean, this car is 51 years old now. There's not a squeak, not a rattle. Nothing is really out of the ordinary when you go down the road. I mean, it's got such a feeling of solidness that it is unmatched by any car of the era.
Yeah, it's shocking just how much this car feels like a bank vault. And it is, to this day, a really nice car to drive.
One thing I think we should talk about is when we say technologically advanced for 73, yes, it did have four-wheel disc brakes and stuff like that. From a feature standpoint, though, you could get a Cadillac with way more technology. So, for example, this thing still has manual seats, manual mirror. It doesn't even have a passenger side mirror.
Yeah.
Right? Cadillacs, Lincolns, you could have gotten all of these features for a much more affordable price point, but you wouldn't have the durability and the longevity that Mercedes offered.
Yeah, and of course there were some models of this car that had some extra features. The 300 SEL you could get with the Citroen hydropneumatic suspension.
Good point, yeah.
You could get a passenger mirror for this car. There are a few other things like that, but even so, yeah, it drives great to this day.
And it feels pretty small, which is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're pretty close together here. You could easily see both corners of the car. It's really not that long. It's a pretty compact car by modern standards.
Yeah, it is. It's narrow, the roof is low. This car is long even by today's standards, but not compared to the new car.
Yeah, very true. Now, look, I know the trendy thing to do at this point would be to say, you know, the old interior was better and it used more organic materials and higher quality finishes, but the Mercedes S-Class in this current generation is one of the few modern cars that easily matches the interior quality of the old and in some ways brings it up a level. So that old S-Class had this really thick wood across the dash. Well, this new S-Class has a modernization of that trend with this open pore walnut and these aluminum streaks that run down. Now, this is like a $3,000 option, but it is absolutely gorgeous. It really is fantastic. And then you get to the seats, right? That old Mercedes has seats that'll last 50 years. This really durable brown, either MB-Tex or leather, depending on how you spec it. But these new seats, in this case in the Carmine Red, I mean, they're just so much better. Not only do they massage, heat, multi-contour, and do all that, but they're just so much more supportive than the old seats. There's only a couple things on this inside which I think are a departure from the old one. All the piano black down the center doesn't look great. The 12.8-inch screen actually fits this dash pretty well, and then the digital gauge cluster isn't quite as elegant as the old one. Now, the cool thing about this are you do have multiple different settings, including understated, sport, and exclusive, and that kind of thing, but having those physical dials does really elevate the old interior. But for the most part, I mean, Mercedes knocked this new and out of the park. As understated as it is on the outside, on the inside, this is just a luxury cocoon.
What is that, Tommy?
That right there, Case, is the energizing comfort. Wait till you see vitality.
Oh, I smell it.
Yeah. Changes the scent, changes the music, changes the theme on the screen, changes the ambient lighting.
Does it make you feel vitalized?
I am vitalicized. It's not a word. Now, the backseat of the S580 has become really a cocoon of not only luxury, but features now, because this particular version has over $10,000 in rear seat options alone, including electronically adjustable rear seats with heat, ventilation, and massage. We got these weird tablets back here. We've got a footrest on the passenger side. I mean, you got everything from shades on both windows and even up here on the roof. And of course, you can't forget the back window. So look, I mean, this is an amazing place to spend time. And once again, the attention to detail back here is really second to none. That open pore walnut continues on the backs of the seats, so it's a very cohesive interior. Check this out, Case. We've got a wireless charger in the back seat, USB-C, and even a little phone holder pops out. But you gotta take your phone out of the case to use that.
Well, that's not that useful.
No, that's not super helpful. Normal seatbelts, Case?
Yeah, this is a little easier. I'll give you that.
It's a little easier. Now, what I love about this S-Class is, you know, modern cars, they're much quicker, they handle much better, and in a lot of ways, they're also much firmer than old cars, right? Spring rates have really gotten a lot stiffer, and vehicles are tuned more for high performance driving, even in the luxury sphere, than all-out comfort, except for the S-Class. This thing is still a yacht on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels a lot tighter. It feels like a stiffer, higher performance car than that. But by modern day standards, it's still very plush. So
4-liter bi-turbo V8 twin turbo, 496 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque, just leaving it in comfort mode, a little bit of brake torque, 9-speed automatic.
Yeah. I know it's not the AMG, but that's pretty quick.
Dude, this thing hauls butt. For what it is, it's such an impressive straight line performer. And it just pulls and pulls throughout all 9 speeds. I mean, you can be at the top of 5th and it feels like it's pulling just as hard as it is in 2nd. It's such a high performance engine.
The thing that is most striking to me about being in this car after being in really any other car and stepping to this is how quiet it is in here.
It is borderline silent. I mean, it's almost like driving an EV. At normal speeds, you have no idea that you're dealing with almost 500 horsepower.
Yeah, the isolation is up there with just about the best of anything you can buy.
And the ride quality, we've gone from steel springs in your car originally to air suspension in this car, and it's beautiful. It's super soft. It's not sporty in the comfort mode, and it just kind of floats along, absorbs everything.
Yeah, it does. It's a really nice balance between a car that doesn't feel like it wallows through turns, but it's still very comfortable. It doesn't at any point beat you up, even on our really terrible roads that we have around here in Colorado.
Look, there are 2 fundamental improvements that make this car much more livable than the old car. 4MATIC all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Makes this a 4-season car in Colorado. And 4-wheel steering.
Yeah.
So depending on which Mercedes you're dealing with, you can get up to 10 degrees. Some of them have 4.5 degrees. But the 4-wheel steering makes this enormous S-Class drive like a C-Class.
Yeah, that really helps with the size of this car, because like we talked about, this is way bigger than my car, but because of the rear wheel steering, the turning radius is probably better.
It's incredible, yeah. And in parking lots, even in city environments, just the way this car is able to maneuver turns makes it such a more livable vehicle than older generations of S-Class. And look, I love old cars, and I was really hoping this video would be another one of those typical, we don't make them like we used to. But I kind of think that the S-Class is a bit of an exception.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money.
That money isn't going nowhere. There really is a lot about this car that makes it feel just as substantial, and in a lot of ways even more substantial than the old.
All right, Case, walk me through the pricing, 73 through 2024.
That is one of the startling things to look at, because back in the day, this car would have been around $11,000 new, which was a lot of money in 1973, but adjusted for inflation, that's around $80,000.
Yeah, right, which is still a lot of money, but when you consider that this new S-Class is $159,000, so double the price of yours after inflation, cars have gotten a lot more expensive. Of course, this car has real brakes and airbags and much more sophisticated crumple zones, so like it's a more car, but I mean, double that's a big ask.
Yeah, especially considering that's not even the AMG, it's not a Maybach, it's not the upper end of what these cars can be price-wise.
Now, what I do think is cool, though, is that this is one of the few cars that I think has really stuck to its roots from a driving experience, from an interior quality experience. So I think we're both in agreement. The old one, I mean, is a much more elegant car on the outside with its crisp lines and its complete lack of pedestrian safety, but the new one on the inside still retains a lot of that quality.
Absolutely. Both of these cars are very beautiful. Obviously, at this day and age, they serve a very different purpose. But the new S-Class, even I have to admit, is a stunning vehicle.
Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. This has been Tommy.
In case.
We'll see you on another episode.